So why the hell did that bastard go back on his word? 300 years later, Egen was reincarnated into the body of a 13-year-old boy, only to learn from history books that the demon kings were still alive. To make matters worse, he had to live as the third-generation descendant of that damned hero Vermo. Since he wasn't from the main bloodline, it took him 3 full days to reach the main house of the family to prepare for the bloodline inheritance ceremony. Knowing he shouldn't cause trouble before achieving his goals, Egen still couldn't stand by and let that arrogant brat Jian, who thought he was Super Ion, just because he was from the main branch, act out of line. The defeated kid swore revenge, but Egen didn't care. That damned Vermo. From now on, I'll mess with your descendants. It's not like I ever wanted to be one of them. Damn this cursed cycle of reincarnation. Eventually, the inheritance ceremony banquet, hosted by the head of the family, Gillette, began. To ensure a fair competition in choosing the next successor of Vermeo's legacy, he invited the Tower Master, Liu Beijia, to serve as chief examiner. Egen immediately recognized him as the third-generation An disciple of Crush, the sorceress, Xian. Liu Beijia had created a special labyrinth for the children to conquer. Each child would enter through a separate path, avoiding traps and defeating an elite monster at the center. For safety, everyone could rest assured. Everything inside was made from illusion magic. The reward for defeating the final boss was a treasure hidden in the family's artifact chamber. Egen, aiming to recover his latent powers, trained day and night for it. However, his efforts didn't escape the notice of 2 other side-branch children, Garrus and Desaiz. Garrus, the silent type, randomly stripped his shirt to show off his muscles, leaving Egen totally confused. Was this guy promoting muscle enhancement potions or something? Desaiz seemed more normal compared to her weird brother. After hearing Egen had defeated Zine, she challenged him to a one-on-one duel. It was the perfect chance for Egen to assess their strength, so he accepted. As soon as Garrus shouted for the duel to begin, Desaiz launched forward at a blinding speed, aiming to strike first, but abruptly stopped. Stunned by the overwhelming aura Egen gave off, flawless and without a single opening. Still, she charged in despite the danger. But none of her attacks landed. Egen blocked them all with ease. Though her speed impressed him, there was simply no comparison. With a single swing of his spear, Egen ended the match, leaving both siblings in awe and silent admiration. At last, the day of the competition arrived. Everyone gathered before a magical gate. The moment Egen stepped into the labyrinth, he recalled how his old hero party had once demolished this very place. Now, relying on that experience, he advanced with ease, already overpowered, and now with the equivalent of cheat codes. The younger participants didn't stand a chance. As expected, the 3 weakest children, coming from side branches and lacking any formal martial arts training, couldn't even make it past the Shilan boss, and had to call for Tower Master Liu Beijia to rescue them. Meanwhile, the remaining participants pushed forward confidently and soon cleared the first stage. But Egen was far ahead of the rest. He now stood before Chen Xing, a massive and savage creature, designed to force challengers to sneak past rather than fight. Yet to Egen, it was nothing more than a test of strength. In an instant, he unleashed hundreds of slashes on Chen Xing, finishing with a badass blow that pierced straight through its belly. Elsewhere, the musclehead Garrus had also defeated his monster, though he was covered in wounds, and even had fractured ribs. No one could tell how the weaker kids managed to survive, but just as Liu Beijia had calculated, the remaining 3 cleverly distracted Chen Xing and slipped through without lifting a finger. Eventually, everyone reached the labyrinth center, where the strongest boss awaited. Xian, stunned by the overwhelming power of the monstrous new Ma, was suddenly snapped out of his daze by a voice calling his name. It turned out that Egen had been waiting here for a long time, just to see who would arrive first. Unexpectedly, the 3 children showed up at the same time. Knowing he could easily defeat the monster, Egen decided to let the kids have a go first. The final boss wouldn't attack unless approached within a certain range. Based on the order they entered the gate earlier, he gave instructions. Desaiz would go in first, followed by Xian, and Shan would go last, only if the others were defeated. And if Xian managed to take it down, Egen declared he'd call her Big Sister for the rest of his life. That sounded good to Xian's ears, so he accepted the challenge. At that moment, Des Sais was fiercely struggling in a solo battle against the massive new Ma beast. However, using her small frame and agility, she managed to drive a spear into its stomach. Yet despite her best efforts, the spear, lacking any mana enhancement, was no more effective than a toothpick, unable to pierce the creature's tough muscles. Seizing the opportunity, the monster grabbed her tightly and flung her out of the arena, ending the match. Clearly, this wasn't a real monster. Otherwise, she'd be dead by now. Next up was Xian. He confidently stepped forward with sword in hand, declaring, "I'll show you how the blood of the main branch operates on a completely different level from your sidelines." Instantly, he channeled a large amount of mana into his sword, allowing it to slice through Numa's muscles with ease. But before he could celebrate, the mana was drained completely. As it turned out, to ensure fairness, the labyrinth didn't allow the use of any powers outside of physical abilities. Though terrified, Xian still charged in, driven by pride and Egan's mocking attitude, and ended up getting slammed flat by the monster. Egan laughed mockingly at the defeated Xian, enraging him to the point of speechless frustration. Xian, on the other hand, pretended to be timid, feigning fear of losing and avoiding the fight altogether. And so, for the final round, Egan drew his sword and stepped up to face Numa. He didn't rush in, instead cleverly dodging direct attacks and waiting for openings. Exploiting the beast's speed and momentary lapses, he tricked it into punching itself square in the face. While Numa was stunned and exposed its weak spots, Egan relentlessly targeted its arteries with clean, precise strikes until he broke through the tough hide. Finally, he drove the full weight of his blade into the open wound, causing the monster to scream in agony as blood gushed like a waterfall. In the end, Egan emerged victorious. All illusions within the labyrinth faded, signaling the end of the ceremony. Lord Gillette, head of the household, was overjoyed and deeply satisfied with the performance of the child from the collateral line. Meanwhile, Tower Master Liu Jia was visibly unsettled. He had designed the new Ma not for one-on-one combat, but to encourage teamwork and exploration of different strategies. Yet this boy had shattered that vision, tearing apart the entire training setup meant for the children of the main branch. It was cause for concern. This boy's overwhelming dominance would become a serious threat to the biological children in the upcoming succession battle. However, the clan leader's stance was firm. The position of head of house must be held by the most outstanding individual in the Liunhe family. If his children were too weak to protect a birthright they were born with, then they were unworthy of leading the clan. For now, it was time to celebrate. Naturally, for the defeated children, this moment weighed heavily. The worst off was the eldest son, Eon. He didn't even make it to the center of the labyrinth, having been distracted by spells and monsters. His curiosity wasn't blameworthy, but forgetting the goal of bloodline succession was truly disappointing. Compared to him, the siblings Zien and Xian had at least managed to reach the center of the labyrinth. Their failure was merely due to a lack of experience. Lord Gillette offered generous praise to Egan for his impressive performance in directly confronting both the monster and Numa. Upon hearing this, the muscular Garrus was both amazed and regretful. "If that scrawny kid had taken my muscle-enhancing potion," he muttered, "his physique would have looked way better." In the end, the children had conquered the labyrinth so quickly that there hadn't even been time to prepare a proper celebration. Lord Gillette ordered Liu Bei to escort the children back, while Egan alone would accompany him to the family's artifact chamber to select a reward. Xian watched them leave, visibly jealous. Despite being a direct descendant, he had never once been allowed to visit that mysterious room. As they walked, Gillette began chatting with his collateral line grandson. Egan was praised for his ability to wield a wide range of weapons. Although the sword was the symbolic weapon of the family, Gillette explained that his great-grandfather, the legendary Vermao, had mastered all types of arms. But Vermao was not the only one with such talent. One of his comrades, though often portrayed in stories as troublesome and envious of Vermao, was actually a warrior of nearly equal skill. Though constantly overshadowed, he never gave up. Instead, he pushed himself harder and harder to break his own limits, and eventually died an honorable death, sacrificing himself for his friend. "That," said Gillette, "is why I admire him even more than our great ancestor Vermao." Though the tale may have been dramatized to teach moral lessons, hearing such words directly from Lord Gillette left Egan deeply moved. Before long, they arrived at the secret chamber nestled deep within the forest. Gillette revealed that Egan was the first collateral line child ever allowed inside. Of course, this decision had already been discussed and approved by the Council of Elders, including former heads of the family, each of them exceptional in their own right. Among the many heirlooms kept in the vault, the treasure Egan desired most was the Holy Sword, a powerful weapon of immense might. But claiming it would not be easy, for it was the very symbol of the family, one that no outsider could possess. There was another reason, too. Since the time of Vermao, no one had ever been acknowledged by the Holy Sword. At that moment, Lord Gillette began the ritual by offering his blood to unlock the chamber. As the massive doors slowly opened, the Holy Sword stood in the center, radiating a brilliant light. Egan's excitement surged. Despite being warned, he decided to give it a try. It was said that this sword had been forged by the gods during the earliest days of the UGA Empire. After being sealed away for ages, it had only ever acknowledged Vermao as its master. During the Great War, it pierced 3 out of the 5 demon lords, before becoming nothing more than a torch guiding the family's path. Brimming with confidence, Egan stepped forward, gripped the holy sword, and tried to pull it free. But no matter how much he clenched his muscles, glutes and all, it wouldn't budge an inch. He consoled himself, thinking, even if I could pull it out, I wouldn't be able to take it outside anyway. Better find another treasure. Indeed, the chamber was filled with sacred weapons that left Egan in awe. There was Aspel, a blade that absorbed the mana of its targets and granted immunity to all magic. Napalip, a thunder bow that shot lightning bolts regardless of range. And Rapper, an illusionary sword that transformed into a 100-blade electric whip. While passing through the area of gemstones and jewelry, Egan was stunned to discover the very same necklace he had worn in a previous life. It seemed somehow connected to a pact made between the last 2 demon lords and that Vermao guy to secure peace. But what exactly was the nature of that pact? Lord Gillette was visibly surprised when he saw Egan choose such an old and plain necklace. He immediately noticed it had no spiritual power and wasn't even a family treasure. Because of this, he borrowed it temporarily and asked Tower Master Liu Bei to reappraise it. Moreover, he allowed Egan to select one more treasure. Without hesitation, Egan chose the Storm Blade Wind, a sword infused with the elemental power of the Wind King, so powerful that few could ever match its might. Young Desai's was fiercely opposed when she found out that Egan hadn't chosen a spear. Perhaps she was still haunted by her earlier defeat. Garrus agreed with her opinion, believing Egan had chosen the wrong weapon. He thought it was too light for someone with muscle mass, and that an axe or hammer would be more suitable. He even tried to entice Egan with strength-enhancing potions. "Drink this, and you'll be unbeatable." But Egan politely declined. Speaking of spears and hammers, it suddenly occurred to Egan that the vault hadn't contained any weapons used by the demon lords from 300 years ago in the Moyu He Mute War. Back then, 5 demon lords led the charge. At the top was the World Ender, Rank 2, the Demon King of Incarceration. Rank 3, the Demon King of Frenzy. The last 2 ranks are the Demon King of Brutality and the Demon King of Slaughter. Only 2 weapons, the Spear Jus and the Crushing Hammer Jiglot, had ever been seized by Vermao. It was likely they were too powerful to be stored within the family's treasure vault. Meanwhile, Tower Master Liu Bei Jie had arrived at the family office, summoned by Lord Gillette. He immediately examined the necklace Egan had taken from the treasure chamber. Strangely, despite probing deeply and reading the residual mana memory within, Liu Bei found nothing extraordinary. If this isn't a magical artifact, then I'll return it to Egan. After all, this is the one thing he chose over a whole chamber of treasures. The next morning, Egan and his maid encountered Lord Jonlin, Gillette's younger brother, a man obsessed with conquest. Jonlin had no interest in love or marriage. He was thrilled to finally meet the boy who had come out on top in the clan's succession ceremony. "I wanted to meet you sooner," he said, "but according to tradition, only the clan head may witness the ritual. Today, Lord Gillette has summoned you, likely to congratulate you." There may be other reasons I don't know, but I'll be glad if we get to meet more often from now on. Egan thanked him and proceeded into Lord Gillet's chamber, where the family head was already waiting, by a small banquet table prepared in his honor. The first order of business was to return the necklace. When Egan learned that the Tower Master had only been able to read the item's mana signature, going back 100 years and had found nothing significant, he was shocked, realizing that Vermau must have sealed the necklace with powerful magic to hide something within. Still, he was visibly overjoyed and gratefully thanked Lord Gillet for allowing him to keep it. The second matter was even more serious. From the weight in Gillet's voice, Egan guessed where this was going and quickly declined. Though he acknowledged Sion was sweet and kind, he wasn't ready to consider engagement or marriage. Thinking back, even after beating up her brother, Sion had remained unusually friendly toward him, probably to prepare for a political marriage. But before Egan could ramble on, Gillette cut him off with a laugh and clarified the misunderstanding. He had no intention of marrying off two 13-year-olds. Egan was mortified, realizing that even after reincarnation, his weakness for girls hadn't faded one bit. What Gillette truly wanted was to adopt Egan as his foster son. "If you accept," he explained, "I'll formally bring your birth father into our main bloodline. This is purely to ensure your future and carries no other motive. But if you choose not to, you'll still have my love and support. I'd only be saddened that such talent might not reach its full potential. Joining the main family means gaining privileges. Chief among them, the chance to study under the clan's strongest mana wielder. Mana crystals are often found in high-level monsters, but the stronger the crystal, the harder it is to refine. That's when a skilled mentor becomes crucial. Only here can you find all of that. If you return to your old village, deprived of resources and proper training, it would be a tragic waste of such a gifted young man." Lord Gillette decided that he must personally meet Egan's father to discuss the adoption. After their talk concluded, Egan was on his way back when he caught the scent of perfume lingering in the air. It came from just around the corner. Someone was clearly standing there. To his surprise, it was Lady Gillette, the Lord's second wife. She pretended to have just arrived and accidentally run into him. Well, if life gave her a role, why not play it? Egan decided to play along, curious to see what she was scheming. After trying unsuccessfully to pry information about Egan's meeting with her husband, she had to admit this boy had quite a bit of backbone. Unsurprising, since he had single-handedly eliminated 3 direct-line heirs during the succession ritual. She realized this boy had great potential, and it would be smarter to build ties rather than make an enemy. Using Jian as a political marriage pawn might not be such a bad move either. Realizing she couldn't get anything out of him, she changed the subject, scolding her son Sion for his rudeness toward Egan a few days prior, pretending to apologize and promising to discipline the boy, expressing hopes that they would get along in the future. Egan thanked her and excused himself, still unsettled by her fake sweetness and hidden malice. He made a mental note to stay alert around her in the future. After 3 days of travel from a distant village, Egan's father, Iga, finally arrived at the clan's main estate. He was still in disbelief that his son had emerged victorious. Egan had always shown extraordinary talent, but their poverty had made nurturing that talent near impossible. He had always worried that his son might be bullied due to his secondary lineage. But against all odds, here they were. Just then, a familiar voice called out, breaking his thoughts. It was Egan. Overwhelmed with emotion, Iga ran to embrace his son tightly, weeping in relief to see him safe. Only then did he notice Lord Gillette standing nearby. Startled, he quickly apologized and introduced himself. After exchanging greetings, Iga was stunned to hear Lord Gillette's proposal to adopt Egan. Following a thoughtful discussion, he agreed, fully trusting that his son would thrive in this new environment. The next day, a grand celebration was held to honor the unprecedented victory of a secondary line child, an event that might have been a disgrace under different circumstances. The guests gathered, congratulating Iga, including a man who was likely Garrus's father, given how passionately he kept advertising his family's muscle-enhancing potions. The only ones who seemed withdrawn were Lady Gillette and her son Sion, having already heard the news that Egan would become part of the family. She tried to comfort her son, saying that although Egan would never qualify to inherit the clan title, it was still humiliating to be the first direct-line heir in history to lose to an offshoot. That boy is just too strong. Instead of opposing him, befriend him. He'll be a powerful ally someday. Hearing that, Sion hesitated, unsure how to approach Ijin, who seemed so arrogant. Meanwhile, his little sister Xian continued tailing Egan, insisting that he call her big sister just because she was born a few months earlier. I'm younger than my brother by 5 seconds, so I'm technically a little sister. But since you're younger than me by months, calling me big sis totally makes sense. Egan ignored her cheeky logic. He'd rather die than call a 13-year-old brat big sister. As for Lord Gillette's first wife and their eldest son, Ion, although Ion had been accepted as an apprentice by Tower Master Liu Beijia and promised protection from Red Tower discrimination, his mother fiercely opposed the idea, obsessed with making him the future clan head. Eventually, with Lord Gillette's intervention, Ion was freed from his status-hungry mother and allowed to follow Liu Beijie to begin his new life. After the banquet, the guests began returning home. That very day marked Egan's first official mana training session since his reincarnation. John Leon was already waiting to escort him to the clan's mana conduit, an artificial source of power created by Vermao himself 300 years ago. His strength back then had been monstrous. Following his mentor's instructions, Egan sat at the center of a massive circle to begin. The mana training method, known as White Flame, was originally reserved for direct line descendants. As John Leon activated the technique, his body radiated an intense white glow, just like the legendary Vermao, surrounded by a dense mana aura that blazed like platinum fire. He began the training by offering a small trace of white flame mana to help Egan sense it, followed by teaching him the correct breathing and how to gradually release his inner energy. Within 10 minutes, a current of mana had already begun circling Egan's body. Leon was astonished. He himself hadn't awakened to this stage nearly as quickly when he first trained. At the end of the first training session, just before they parted ways, Leon explained that every person possesses a star core inside their body that stores mana. Once training reaches a certain level, the core begins to split, allowing for significantly greater mana capacity. The great ancestor Vermao was the only one in the clan's history to achieve 10 stars. Leon and Lord Gillette currently held 6. The 3 children from the main line had 1 star each, and at their current pace were expected to reach 2 stars within a year. I estimate it usually takes 8 years to gain a single star, but I think you'll be much faster if you don't get lazy. On the outside, Egan appeared earnest and determined, but inwardly he chuckled. The moment he first sensed mana coursing through his new body, he already realized how much more capable it was compared to his past one. With the support of the White Flame ritual, achieving 10 stars was simply a matter of time. As soon as he returned to his room, Egan ordered the maid to bring him the Storm Sword Win, the very reason he had pushed himself to learn mana manipulation in the first place. As expected, the moment a surge of mana flowed from his core into the blade, a powerful whirlwind erupted, nearly flinging the poor maid across the room. From within the eye of the storm, a loud voice rang out, calling his name. At long last, he had succeeded in summoning the Wind Elemental King, who had long been sealed within the sword wind. Even more shockingly, the king recognized within Egan the reincarnated soul of one of the 5 legendary heroes of the past. Egan immediately cut to the chase, demanding answers about why Vermao hadn't killed the remaining demon lords. The Wind King explained that the battle at the demon castle had been fierce, but ultimately meaningless. Vermao and the prisoner demon lord were the only ones left standing, yet Vermao chose to seal his sword away instead of killing his enemy. It appeared some sort of pact had been made between them, and it was up to Egan to uncover what it was. Enraged by the vague answer, Egan was left unsatisfied, cursing the cryptic spirit, as the Wind King gradually faded into nothingness. At that moment, Egan collapsed, completely drained of mana. It wasn't until the following day that he awoke, his head pounding like a drum, his hands trembling as if he had just downed a dozen spicy chicken feet. The feeling of mana exhaustion was utterly unpleasant. A short while later, the clan leader and John Leon arrived to check on Egan's condition. They had already heard the story from the maid, Nina, and were stunned that Egan had possessed enough mana to summon an elemental spirit. But Egan knew better. He hadn't summoned the spirit. That old wind god had come to him of his own accord. This wasn't something to reveal until he had more answers. So he scratched his head, laughed awkwardly, and said, Maybe he was just curious about who inherited the sword. He added that the Wind King had said he looked forward to meeting Egan again once he'd matured, then returned to the spirit realm. After everyone left, Egan once again picked up the sword and stared at it thoughtfully. With the little mana he had left, he tried channeling it into the blade once more. A breeze kicked up, and this time, instead of the Wind King, a tiny, unimpressive wind spirit girl emerged. She was so weak, she couldn't even speak. But she seemed to understand that her new master was underwhelmed, and annoyed, she zipped past his face and vanished. Time passed, and Egan's days resumed. Now 17 years old, he stood in front of the mirror each morning, admiring his toned body with a hint of vanity. He had achieved 3 stars through the white flame ritual. With a flick of his will, he released a wave of mana from within, radiating immense pressure as 3 glowing stars pulsed brightly on his chest. Xian was utterly shocked by this revelation. Despite having started her training a whole 7 years earlier, she had only reached 2 stars. No wonder he had never managed to defeat Egan even once during their sparring sessions. His shock deepened when he heard that Egan was planning to leave for the Red Tower to study more advanced magic. At this rate, he's going to get so far ahead that I'll never catch up. Trying to mask his unease, Xian gave a half-hearted excuse, saying he'd be really sad if Egan left for the Red Tower, but he ignored her completely. For the past year, that strange girl had stopped talking to anyone and trained alone in silence. Meanwhile, Lord Gillett was astonished to learn of Egan's desire to leave and pursue his magical studies at the Red Tower. At your age, no one has ever reached 3 stars before. If you keep pushing yourself like this, you might even reach 4 stars before coming of age. But when he heard Egan express his thirst for knowledge in other fields, and his desire not to be limited, Gillett, as a father, couldn't bring himself to hold his son back. I understand your intentions, but promise me one thing. Don't ever get involved with dark magic. That Black Tower was a gathering place for dark mages. Although there had been no recent rumors of danger surrounding it, its history was stained with darkness. As descendants of the great Vermau, it was an unspoken rule of their clan to stand firmly against dark magic. Egan, well aware of the horrors it had brought upon the world 300 years ago, didn't even hesitate before responding. I hate dark magic too. There's no way I'd ever join them. At last, Egan succeeded in gaining permission from the clan leader to leave the tower. As he walked down the hallway, he heard a knock at Xian's room. Her voice called out from within, inviting him to come closer. She had just finished training and was soaked in sweat, so she didn't want to come out. Already knowing that Egan planned to leave for the Red Tower, she wanted to stop him. There are plenty of ways to study magic without leaving, and if you go now, Xian and I might catch up and surpass your skill level. What do I have to do to make you stay? This training will take years, and it'll be incredibly difficult. During that time, your father will miss you dearly. Uncle John and your brother Xian, too. When I heard him talking about you, I could clearly tell he doesn't want you to go. Despite her words, Egan remained firm in his decision and gently encouraged her to keep training hard. Hearing that, Xian's heart skipped a beat, then clenched painfully in her chest. After hearing his footsteps fade away, she finally opened the door, only to find that Egan was no longer there. You jerk! You didn't even let me finish! The truth is, I don't want you to leave either. Her voice trailed off into choked sobs echoing through the cold training chamber. The magic gate had been created by Tower Master Liao Beija specifically for the Vermau bloodline. With the approval of everyone, Egan was now ready to embark on his long and arduous training journey. Perhaps the happiest person about this decision was his stepmother. This took the pressure off her own son's claim to power. Burning with determination, Egan couldn't help but frown when he glanced at his father. Dad, stop crying. You were all cheerful a minute ago, so why are you like this now that I'm leaving? Even if you cry, I won't stay. At least send me off with a smile, okay? Hearing that, Gillett wiped his tears and mustered a bright smile to send his beloved son off. Now free of hesitation, Egan smiled back. Take care, everyone. I'll see you again someday. The kingdom of magic, where the Crimson Tower stood, was a place of wonders. It was known as the Pentaspire City because 5 magical watchtowers formed a perfect pentagon with the royal palace at its center. Aegon had flown on Sienna's broomstick before, but nothing beat the comfort of the modern magic car. From above, the city looked vastly different from his previous life. Floating islets, unique to this city, acted as sky stations housing teleportation gates, all held up by complex magic. They were not only symbols of magical excellence, but also a testament to the city's convenience and economic strength. Sitting in the car with a cheerful tour guide, Aegon was introduced to this new world. There were a total of 15 sky stations, all created by the brilliant Sienna. Aegon figured this magical car might be her invention too. Though this technology had existed for over 100 years, frequent updates kept accident rates incredibly low. As the guide went on and on, Aegon cut him off and asked to visit Sienna's mansion. That's an excellent choice. It's one of the 3 must-see places in Pentaspire City. 300 years ago, after returning from the Abyss, Lady Sienna rebuilt this city and made that mansion her home. 200 years ago, she abruptly left, leaving behind only a letter saying she wanted to retire. No further explanation. Since then, her disciples and many wizards across the land tried to uncover her whereabouts, to no avail. The most curious part? He vanished on his birthday. I suspect he returned to Mo Yu He Mu Te, possibly to mourn a fallen comrade or to seek revenge. I bet you didn't know about the final words that hero left for Sienna, did you? Suddenly, Aegon growled, "Stop making up stories about my death!" The guide froze in shock, and Aegon quickly tried to cover up. The books just exaggerate things. Unfazed, the guide continued. Everyone knew that Sienna had opposed the dark magic tower and sought to destroy it. One theory claimed that violent sorcerers who supported the Dark Tower had assassinated him. Aegon immediately dismissed the idea. There was no way those pathetic dark wizards could have killed Sienna. They weren't strong enough. But if it had been a demon king, that was another matter. 2 of them were still in contact with the city through the Dark Tower. To them, Sienna's existence might have been the greatest threat. They would pay for it. After some travel, Aegon finally arrived. Before him stood a majestic mansion, with a long line of citizens praying outside. They looked anxious, seemingly pleading for something difficult. The guide explained they were preparing for the magic entrance exam. Due to poverty, they couldn't afford to enter. Entry cost a hefty sum, but Aegon, as a descendant of the great Vermo, was immediately welcomed by the guards with no trouble. Well then, let's see how she lived. As he walked down the corridor, he marveled at how vast the mansion was. Did she really live here alone for over 100 years? Aegon remembered his last conversation with Sienna. After slaying the mad demon king, she had asked what his plans were for the future. Back then, Aegon had been rightfully called foolish. He spent all his youth throwing his life away in battle, never once considering his own happiness. At least that bastard on the other side had the dream of becoming emperor. No matter how crazy it was still a dream, and people had the right to dream. Just as the mood grew serious, Aegon had foolishly teased her for getting too drunk. That speech was so cheesy it made my hands shake. Seeing her genuinely annoyed, he stopped and asked what her dream was. Blushing, she had said, "I just want a simple life like everyone else. To get married, have children, and grow old watching my grandkids." Aegon still couldn't understand why she hadn't pursued that dream and, instead lived alone for centuries. Unconsciously, he raised his hand to touch a portrait of her, but a nearby guard shouted, startling him. "Damn it! Right when I was getting emotional," he muttered. He remembered. He hadn't come here just to admire a painting. From his research, the basement beneath the entire estate held a grand library. Sure enough, it was as extravagant as expected, lined with golden decor. Books of magic filled every shelf, though some volumes had gone missing. He believed this was a clue she had left behind. But before he could do more, the same nosy guard returned to warn him, no touching. Now he couldn't even open the books, only glance at their titles. After searching high and low, Aegon returned to the central hall where the painting hung. He was certain she had left something behind, but even after combing the place, he found nothing. "Sienna, if you don't like this middle finger, Then come find me yourself. Tell me everything, if you're still alive. By then, night had fallen. With a scrunched-up face, the tour guide congratulated Egan on completing his tour. His sour expression quickly turned to joy when Egan flipped him a gold coin for waiting. Egan then asked to be taken to the Crimson Magic Tower, thus ending his first day in this new land. Taking advantage of the long ride in the flying car, Egan decided to learn more about his older brother Eon, who was also studying at the Crimson Tower. But the moment he saw the strange, uneasy expression on the tour guide's face, Egan realized this might not be a simple topic. He gently pressed, "He's my brother. He's been here for 4 years since we were adopted. I haven't spoken a single word to him. I just need to know a few things so I don't cause a scene when we meet. Tell me the rumors about him." Only after Egan swore on his honor not to get angry no matter what did the guide begin to speak. But his words had barely left his mouth when Egan exploded in rage, startling the poor man. Who would have guessed? That bastard Ion spent his nights out carousing with succubi. This isn't Helmet. Where the hell did those filthy demon whores even come from? The terrified guide begged Egan to calm down. It didn't require a trip to Helmet. Most of it came from the accursed Dark Magic Tower. Besides dark mages, it harbored all kinds of demons, and the rumors didn't just stop at harmless fun. No, they went far beyond that. The city was infamous for a decrepit alley, known to harbor shady dealings. While the place was best known for its black market, there were also a few illicit shops that used succubi as staff. Bolero Alley, as it was called, didn't open daily. It only transformed into a den of depravity under the full moon. Egan had no intention of involving himself with Ion, but the mere thought of that disgraceful man, descended from one of the great heroes, defiling himself with filthy demons. If the rumors were true, Egan wasn't sure he could stop himself from slapping the life out of him. By the time he reached the gates of the Crimson Tower, Egan was greeted by a young assistant named Heija. Just as she welcomed him, a thunderous explosion shattered the windows on the tower's 3rd floor. Surprisingly, Heija didn't seem too alarmed. With an awkward laugh, she explained that it was the summoning classroom, and accidents there were common. Right as she finished speaking, 2 tadpole-like demons burst out of the shattered window. But before they could wreak havoc, a pair of magical hands grabbed them midair and crushed them without mercy. Thankfully, Tower Master Liu Beijie had arrived in time to prevent a catastrophe. With a stormy expression, he looked down and scolded his so-called talented students. "What the hell were you thinking? How did a summoning array meant for a lava shark turn into a bunch of demon spawn? Do you realize the danger to the capital if those stinking beasts had gotten loose? Pack your things and get out, all of you!" In the midst of his fury, the Tower Master suddenly sensed a strange energy. Only then did he notice the young noble Egan waiting patiently below. He slowly descended, his expression immediately changing. Of course, this was an honored guest. With a beaming smile, the Tower Master warmly welcomed Egan to the Crimson Tower. 4 years had passed. Egan had grown significantly taller, while the Tower Master, thanks to the use of magic, had not aged a day and still appeared youthful. However, Egan, now trained in mana, could see something others couldn't. Liu Beijie had grown unimaginably powerful. Though not quite on Siana's level, the sheer amount of mana he held was enough to make him a truly worthy master of this magical tower. Liu Beijie began by explaining that magic was a deeply alluring art, but also extremely difficult to master. With Egan's talents, he was confident the boy would pick it up quickly. Suddenly, the sound of a door being dragged open caught the Tower Master's attention, and he instinctively frowned. Without a word, just a glance and a flick of wind magic, the door was flung open, revealing a skinny young man sneaking around inside. It was Ion, the eldest son of the family descended from the great hero Vermao. Egan's eyes burned with fury as he stared at that bastard. Judging by his appearance, the succubi must have drained him dry. Ion flinched when the Tower Master called out to him, stumbling nervously as he tried to greet his younger brother. His words came out broken and shaky, unable to form a full sentence. Egan, his face twisted in disgust, returned the greeting with a cold, biting tone. "How wonderful to see you again." When Ion continued to stand there speechless, The Tower Master ordered him upstairs to finish the reading he had neglected the day before. Once he had gone, Egan and Liu Beijie resumed discussing Egan's training plan. Egan respectfully declined any direct instruction from the Tower Master, knowing that his older brother's disgrace had already drawn criticism toward Liu Beijie from other mages. For now, Egan wished to study magic on his own and see how far his abilities could go. Throughout the month-long training at the Crimson Tower, Egan visited the arcane library every single day, a place of seemingly endless magical knowledge. He read spellbooks from dawn until nightfall, only going to bed in the late hours. Each morning before the library opened, he spent time practicing mana control, physical conditioning, and swordsmanship. Though he barely slept, just a few hours of rest were enough to fully restore him. Today marked the final day of Egan's knowledge-gathering phase. He decided it was time to begin practicing actual spellcasting. According to the magical foundation created by Siana, the most basic method for constructing magic is through the use of magic circles, ritual formations that refine and shape mana. Whenever the amount of mana surpasses the limit of one magic circle, another would naturally form to contain the excess. However, Egan knew this wasn't the only path to mastering sorcery. He proposed that Heija assist him in trying out the Virmao clan's traditional mana training method. Heija warned him sternly that using magic without the support of ritual circles was extremely risky. Mana could easily spiral out of control, leading to internal injuries, or even death. But once Egan made up his mind, nothing could sway him. With no other choice, she agreed, albeit with a caveat. If I sense anything dangerous is about to happen, I'll intervene immediately. If anything happens to you, both the Tower Master and I would be in serious trouble. The training session began quickly. Egan immediately summoned a powerful surge of mana that radiated from his body. In essence, the white flame ritual he used was quite similar to the magic circle system. Both were mechanisms for storing and directing mana. In the white flame method, mana is housed within stars inside the heart. In contrast, magic circles anchor mana with runic formations. If one could replace the inner stars with external formations, the amount of mana that could be stored would increase dramatically. Heija remained on alert outside, ready to act at the slightest sign of instability. But to her surprise, Egan demonstrated flawless control over his immense mana. Not a single wisp leaked. Every ounce was efficiently channeled. With a focused breath, Egan successfully conjured a blazing fire orb. Concentrating harder, he then infused it with more mana, gradually transforming it into a magic bolt. A spell crafted and reshaped through sheer willpower alone, without uttering a single incantation. Satisfied with this achievement, Egan asked Heija to summon a monster so he could test his newly created spell. After a brief consideration, Heija decided that a mid-sized golem would be appropriate, strong enough to be a challenge, yet manageable for both of them to control. Without hesitation, she cast a summoning spell, opening a portal that brought forth a stone golem with glowing eyes. Before it could even make a move, Egan aimed the magic bolt and fired. The beam shot forward like a concentrated lance of light, striking the golem head-on with focused force and intensity. Meanwhile, Tower Master Liu Beijie stood quietly, staring at the remains of the unfortunate golem, his expression a mix of awe and contemplation. He never expected Egan to be able to generate an offensive spell of this caliber using only the white flame ritual. Heija confirmed that in terms of magical classification, Egan's offensive capabilities had already surpassed that of a third-tier mage. A true prodigy, he had seamlessly adapted mana training techniques typically used in martial arts to magical practice. It was likely that Egan's white flame ritual had reached the 3-star level, roughly equivalent to the power of a third-class sorcerer. Back in his room, Liu Beijie couldn't stop thinking about Egan's remarkable growth. The boy had stepped out to handle some errands, but the Tower Master was now seriously considering writing a recommendation letter for him to the Royal Library of Agrium. He had no doubt that Egan's abilities had already reached the standard required to join a place reserved for the most elite mages. Over the past month, Egan had mastered all the foundational knowledge of magic and even created a spell formation that originated from his own heart. That very magic pierced through the hardened defensive shell of a fully grown golem. This is all I can offer to reward such an extraordinary talent. If any mages object, it's only because they're blinded by jealousy. I will protect Egan to the very end, no matter what. Outside the magical city center stood the most beautiful area, highlighted by a grand statue of the legendary mage, Siana. Her face was carved with a sly, triumphant smile that Egan, standing beneath, couldn't help but recognize. That was exactly how she always smiled whenever she won. Suddenly he noticed someone standing beside him, staring at him for some time. The man was muscular and vaguely familiar, as though they had met before, and shockingly, he even knew Egan's name. Frozen in place for a moment, Egan's face darkened as he realized it was none other than Musclehead Garrus. 18 years old and already sporting a beard like a middle-aged man? Though his physique had changed drastically, that flaky personality of his hadn't evolved one bit. Garrus quickly pulled out a bottle of muscle-enhancing tonic and tried to hand it to Egan, who instinctively refused. His business must be doing terribly if he has to peddle his own product like this. Back to the point. Garrus had come looking for Egan as soon as he heard he'd arrived, and the reason was none other than Bolero Alley. He wanted Egan to accompany him to the infamous district to witness an auction for a giant's testicles. At first, Egan thought he had misheard, but judging by Garrus's serious expression, he was clearly obsessed with obtaining them. Garrus explained that the pair of testicles was a key ingredient in brewing a special muscle-growing elixir. I want to sell them to a renowned alchemist and author. Please come with me. The economy's been rough lately, and I fear I might not have enough money to buy them. Then, to everyone's shock, Garrus dropped to his knees and begged. His large, imposing body drew even more attention, causing a commotion around them. Only when Egan quickly agreed and told him to get up, did Garrus finally rise to his feet. Thank you. I swear on my honor I'll pay you back both the principal and interest once I sell the potion. As for how long that would take, Egan had no idea. He'd heard that place had all sorts of powerful artifacts, but they didn't interest him much. What he was focused on was that street. A few days ago, he had spotted Ion walking the halls of the Magic Tower, displaying early signs of succubus separation syndrome. And with tonight being a full moon, there was no doubt in his mind. He had to go to Bolero Alley. Just as he returned, Egan received word that Master Liu Beijie wished to see him. He didn't know what it was about, but it was a good opportunity to ask about Eon. As always, Liu Beijie greeted him warmly. Today, I bring good news, he said with a smile, handing Egan a sealed letter. It was a letter of recommendation for Egan to enter the Royal Academy of Agrium, personally written by the Tower Master himself. That place had been considered the cradle of magic for over 300 years. Now, all the essence of magical advancement converged there. Every famous mage of the present day was a graduate of Agrium. As much as Egan wanted to accept it, he felt the need to stay humble and claimed he might be too young to be recognized in such a place. But Liu Beijie reassured him with confidence. On the contrary, this is the perfect time for you to enter Agrium. Now that you've been exposed to advanced magic, your potential is at its peak. Even if you can't fully grasp the ancient tomes there, just reading and absorbing them will greatly expand your knowledge. Indeed, Agrium housed not only ancient magic, but also the writings of the greatest sages of every age. The most valuable of them all were the 3 books written by Siana herself, where she poured in all of her secret knowledge. These were considered the most powerful magical texts in the city's history. No official copies of witchcraft were allowed outside Agrium. Only one was in circulation for internal use, while the rest were sealed in a vault. But even that one book made all others seem like child's play. When Liu Beijie first read the opening pages, he realized the magic he had studied his entire life was mere kindergarten in comparison. There's no guarantee this recommendation will grant you entry, he continued, but I wanted your opinion before proceeding. Inside, Egan was beaming with excitement, but on the outside, he showed concern. He didn't want to cause trouble for the Tower Master. Liu Beijie quickly reassured him here he held the highest authority. No one would dare oppose him. Still, Egan hesitated. What he was about to say might deeply upset the Tower Master. Without delay, he brought up the matter of Ion, hoping this wouldn't make Liu Beijie reconsider the recommendation. It's about the rumors that Ion has been neglecting his magical studies and spending time with succubi. As expected, Liu Beijie's eyes widened. Clearly, he was aware of Ion's behavior. He awkwardly explained that. He had known about it and had warned Ion several times, but nothing had worked. In the past, many had died from being drained of their essence by succubi. But ever since Xiang Zhao erected her magical barrier, those demons had changed their ways. Though they still fed on human energy, they no longer killed. The nightmare queen of Zhang Xiao had strictly forbidden it. As for Ion, he had left home 4 years ago burdened with immense expectations, yet his talents hadn't matched them. He'd suffered greatly, and despite everyone's best efforts to guide him, little had improved. But the family name of Vermao would not allow him to abandon those expectations. The pressure he endured must have grown unbearable over time, and Liu Beijie believed that letting him vent some of it now and then wasn't a bad thing. I've warned him not to go too far. Without that, he might have collapsed long ago. Egan understood the Tower Master's concern. After spending 4 years with the main family, he had seen the underlying tension firsthand. It all stemmed from the parents, the hot-headed Theonis and the cunning, manipulative Anila. Then there were Xian and Xian, both brilliant and fiercely ambitious. Since living with them, Ion had been under constant pressure. He would rather stay in the magic tower and endure sneers than return home. But none of that could justify seeking out succubi. They might smile kindly, but they were still demons. There would never be true peace between humans and demons. Midnight had come quickly, and the full moon hung high in the sky. Bolero Alley was now bustling, in stark contrast to the silence outside. Egan and Garrus had successfully disguised themselves to blend in. Garrus still didn't understand why they couldn't just walk in openly. The idiot hadn't considered how their presence could ruin the Vermeau family's reputation if recognized. Egan activated a communication device to coordinate with someone already on the move. It turned out a guide had been hired beforehand to track down Ion. No one knew the nooks and crannies of this place better. Egan was worried Ion might be using a disguise spell, making him hard to detect. But when told Ion hadn't even bothered to conceal himself and was wearing the same cloak as always, Egan nearly exploded. That bastard! Wants the whole world to know who he is or what? If he were my kid, I'd beat the crap out of him. Seeing that Egan clearly had another objective in mind, Garrus offered to help, but Egan declined. I've got this. Let's go to the auction first. But Egan declined. I've got this. Let's go to the auction first. Bolero Street was known for hosting countless auctions, all governed by the same set of rules, except for accompanying guests. All participants were isolated in private rooms, unable to see who else was present. Each room had 3 buttons. Press the middle one to participate, the right to raise the bid, and the left to request assistance. After the introduction, Egan suspected this place must be a haven for shady dark mages. His curiosity was piqued. What kind of things would they auction off here? Moments later, a magical curtain lifted, revealing the host and a mysterious box beside him. Thank you all for coming to tonight's auction on this beautiful full moon evening. Normally our auctions feature rare magical artifacts, especially those from the demon realm of Xiangxiao, known for their exceptional quality. Our first item tonight is the Horn of Balk. The starting bid is 10 million. As expected, the items that followed were just as bizarre, ranging from the fruit of Proxia, root of the Mandrago, and even flower bud of the Yews Rock. But what Egan and Garrus were waiting for still hadn't appeared. Egan began to doubt the rumor about the giant's reproductive organs showing up. Garrus, too, looked uneasy. It was, after all, just a rumor. The next item was a mysterious piece of metal, still unidentified to this day. It's been quite a while, and sadly we haven't been able to sell it. Perhaps one of tonight's esteemed guests will recognize its value. This metal was discovered in a desert region. It gives off a stunning light under moonlight. Unfortunately, it can't be reshaped easily, nor does it absorb mana. However, it makes an excellent window ornament for your bedroom thanks to its beautiful glow. We'll start at 1 million rup, the host said as he opened the wooden box. Egan, who had been feeling drowsy, snapped wide awake the moment he saw it. Without hesitation, he slammed his hand onto the green button, startling Garrus. Even the host fumbled. double-checking Egan's decision as Egan shouted a bid of 1.5 million. Who would have thought he'd find it here? A shard of the legendary Moonlight Sword, the Blade of Ruin, shaped like a form never documented in any history. No one else raised the bid, so the shard was awarded to Egan. Garrus was still in shock, unsure why Egan had spent such a fortune on what looked like a rock, but Egan stared intently at it, confirming that the energy radiating from it was unmistakably that of the Moonlight Sword. In his previous life, he had discovered the sword with his comrades, deep within one of the darkest dungeons. Other than Vermao, no one had been accepted by that cursed weapon. The Moonlight Sword was too dangerous, bringing destruction whenever it appeared. Eventually, Vermao shattered it into pieces, probably to keep it from falling into evil hands. Holding the shard now, Egan could sense that its power had greatly diminished. It no longer carried the same terrifying presence it once had. Just then, his communicator buzzed. It was a report that Eon had been spotted. Egan quickly threw on his cloak, bid Garrus farewell, and tossed him his payment card. That should be enough to buy the giant's testicles. Guided by the hired tracker, Egan cut through the bustling crowd and headed north toward Horned Pearl Tavern. The place was clearly off, guarded by two massive demons. Egan's rage flared. It was the first time he'd seen them again since his reincarnation. He should have killed them the moment he laid eyes on them. Calming himself, he asked to enter. The entrance fee was 2 million rup, with additional charges based on dream type and duration. Without a second thought, Egan handed over 2 1 million checks and walked in. Had they been human, they might have received a tip too. Inside was a rowdy mess of unsavory characters and seductive succubi offering dream services. While scanning the crowd for Ion, a sultry demoniess approached with wine. Taking the chance, Egan asked about the dream services, making her blush with excitement. "Oh, don't be in such a rush. You handsome thing. First time here, right? Dreams happen downstairs, but you should drink a little first. A sip helps you reveal what you truly desire." When Egan declined and insisted on heading straight downstairs, she assumed he was just shy and didn't press further. Instead, she led him down while boasting, "Our services are better than the rest. We only take a tiny bit of essence. You might feel tired tomorrow, but you'll be completely refreshed." By then, Egan had memorized the layout of the hall. He slipped her a fat tip, saying he'd changed his mind and just wanted to sleep at home. Though surprised, the demoness didn't question it and escorted him out through the back exit. At a nearby restaurant, Egan ordered a feast and began devouring it while waiting. He knew Ion would eventually pass through here. Not long after, a hooded figure appeared, being helped along by 2 demons. It was the damned Ion, the eldest son of a noble house, now consorting not only with succubi, but even relying on demons for support. Egan tailed them, keeping a safe distance, until they stopped in front of a secluded house in a dead-end alley. After they entered and shut the door, Egan rushed up, only to be blocked by 3 burly thugs. "This ain't no store. Get lost!" Egan didn't budge. The leader, annoyed, lunged to grab his neck, planning to teach him a lesson. But despite the size difference, Egan landed 1 clean punch to the jaw, sending him flying into unconsciousness. The other 2 drew weapons and charged, only to be floored in a single strike, eating dirt. "Smell that? Tell me what goes on in there?" The thug stammered, saying he lost all his forwards, whatever that meant. Egan casually knocked out his remaining teeth and stormed inside to find out for himself. With a loud kick, he smashed down the old door. Smoke filled the empty room, shadows drifting in the haze. The acrid smell confirmed it. Drugs. That bastard Ion had clearly gone far overboard this time. Before Egan could go any further, 3 more demons spotted him. They panicked upon seeing a stranger, clearly shocked since they had hired guards to watch the place 24/7. Seeing them, Egan burst out laughing. A human, a beastman, and a demon working together to traffic drugs. Now that's what I call interracial cooperation for mutual development. Without another word, he summoned 3 dark magic arrows and fired. The thugs hadn't even charged when they were struck down and collapsed. This time, Egan held back a little, so the beast man was still barely conscious. However, There were too many clients in the place for him to know which room held the person Egan was looking for. Tyre channeled mana into it and unleashed a barrage of cyclones, destroying room after room. He was going to demolish this place anyway, so why not start early? But the entire floor showed no sign of his target. That left only the attic. Egan gathered a massive magic arrow and blasted through the ceiling, then flew up to investigate. Sure enough, there was only one room above. Someone was getting some very special treatment, but something about the door felt off, as if it was radiating powerful dark magic. When Egan pulled out the moonlight sword shard, it immediately reacted and began to glow. Suddenly a surge of dark energy burst from the door, rushing toward Egan. Yet the shard flared with immense mana, splitting the darkness and scattering it harmlessly. Though fragmented, the shard retained its powerful resistance to dark magic. A witch stepped out, holding a staff topped with a bizarre skull. She was stunned. Her attack hadn't even fazed the young man before her. Egan suddenly remembered Lord Gila's stern warning, never get involved with dark magic. He had been dead serious about that, and yet his eldest son had fallen deep into this vile corruption. Disgusted by the dark witch's presence, Egan glared and snapped, "Get out of my sight. I don't want to dirty my hands." At that moment, the witch saw white flames burning fiercely around his body and realized something that made her recoil in fear. Just then, the two green demons supporting Ion stepped out. Without a word, they launched themselves at Egan, claws ready to tear. Calmly, Egan channeled mana into his blade and slashed, summoning a vortex that engulfed one of them. The cutting wind sliced him to pieces instantly. The second demon charged again, but in a flash, his hand was severed, flying into the air. As he howled in pain, Egan spun around, grabbed his face, and smashed him hard into the wall, knocking him out cold. The witch, having seen it all, was frozen in terror. Egan gripped his sword and stepped forward, causing her to panic and beg for mercy. But even as she pleaded, she channeled dark magic into her staff, making the skull's eyes glow. Egan didn't even flinch. He casually swung his sword and deflected the energy orb she fired, then flashed forward and pressed the blade to her neck. "Try another trick, and that head won't stay on your shoulders." With that warning, Egan sheathed his sword and stepped into the room. There he found Ion sprawled out on a stone bed, beside a ritual chalice. Inside it squirmed a living, glowing blue object. When Egan asked the witch what it was, she replied, it was the heart of a unicorn. Previously, he had known that the Kirin possessed such powerful mana and divine energy that they were often honored with the title Thantui in sacrificial rituals. Their hearts were even considered better offerings than human hearts. Egan growled, asking the woman if she was forging a contract with a demon king. Startled, she stammered a denial. "Actually, we're contracting with Baron Ofer of Xiangxiao. He's a succubus vassal of Duchess Nogi Bella." Just hearing that name made Egan boil with rage. The Black Witch Queen! So that damned succubus is still alive after 300 years? Xiangxiao is now under the rule of the Demon King of Cataclysm and the Demon King of Confinement. She might not be as powerful as them, but she's strong enough to be called a duchess. So Ion had made a pact with a powerful vassal of the succubus duchess. He even paid a fortune for a Kirin's heart just to get high and drunk into unconsciousness. Is that what you mean? Egan's icy glare made the woman tremble and fall to her knees, begging for mercy. All of this was Master Ion's request. Every expense, including the Kirin's heart, was paid by him. I couldn't go against his will. No, his order. Of course you couldn't, Egan snapped. You probably loved it. The heir of House Vermeo gave you money and asked you to help him forge a contract with your own master. If the contract succeeded, you'd probably get a huge reward from that bastard Ofer. And don't tell me that wretched succubus didn't strike a deal with you too. You're just greedy and wanted this pact for yourself. So if you want to live, shut your mouth and stop shifting the blame. Egan strode over to Ion. He couldn't stand the sight of his older brother, so arrogant, high on drugs, wallowing in pleasure. Without hesitation, he slapped him hard across the face, sending sparks flying from his eyes. The blow twisted Ion's face and snapped him out of his stupor, making him think there was an earthquake. It took a moment before he realized it was Egan standing before him. But Ion was so out of it He could barely speak. Egan glared at him. "Are you sober now? You bastard. I followed you here. I heard about how miserable your life has been lately and tried to understand. I knew you were lost and just wanted some fun to blow off steam. But brother, you should never have touched dark magic. You, a direct descendant of House Leonhe, the top heir to our legacy, dared to forge a contract with demons. Succubi, no less." When Eon tried to make excuses, saying he had no control over it, Egan exploded. He slammed his forehead into Ion's with a loud crack. "You idiot! What do you mean you couldn't control it? Do you even know what happens when you make a contract with demons using dark magic? Your soul becomes their food. If they tell you to die, you die. If they tell you to kill, you kill. And don't think that's the only problem. Becoming a dark mage would shame the entire Leonhe bloodline. What if the demon you made a contract with orders you to kill our parents, your siblings, and take the heirlooms of our family?" Ion meekly mumbled that he had sworn never to follow any order that would harm the family. "You're too naive," Egan roared. "You think demons are as noble as dragons or fairies? Your oath means nothing to them, and even if you said it, could you really keep that promise? You couldn't even handle your own pain without resorting to dreams and alcohol to escape reality." Ion trembled and let out a choked growl. Tears streamed down his face as he looked up and shouted at Egan, "What the hell do you know? You don't know what I've been through. Ever since 4 years ago, you've stolen all the attention." The adopted son who won father's heart. "I never wanted to be head of House Leonhe. I wanted to become a dark mage, go to Xiangxiao, and be acknowledged in that land of freedom." Before he could finish, Egan punched him again, sending him flying into the wall. A deadly aura began to radiate from Egan. He glared and spat. "Acknowledged by demons in Xiangxiao? A descendant of the great Vermo, recognized by devils more than his own family? You've got it all twisted. You were given what others could only dream of. Yet here you are, whining like a brat. I don't want to hear another word from you." Egan took out his phone and called Tower Master Liu Beijie. A while later, royal guards came to escort the witch away. Ion stood stunned as the man who had once protected and supported him witnessed his disgrace. The pain on Liu Beijie's face said everything, as he realized that all his good intentions had led to tragedy for this poor child. Ion, with a shred of reason left, stammered an apology. He tried to explain he hadn't truly fallen into dark magic yet. Liu Beijie, with sorrow in his voice, responded, "But you tried, Ion. What a waste of your Leonhe name. You've shamed Lord Jaius, the one who entrusted you to me. You've shamed the Red Tower, and me, the one who raised you with all my heart." Ion, high and defensive, tried to argue, but Liu Beijie's fury exploded. "One more excuse out of your mouth, and I'll punish you myself for these insults. If you really mean what you say, go tell it to Lord Gias and Lady Theonis, the ones who sent you here." Hearing those names, Ion collapsed, clutching his head and trembling. Liu Beijie turned away in sorrow, regretting the promise he'd made to bring their child from home. Later that night, past midnight, Liu Beijie summoned Gias and Theonis to the Red Tower. The air was thick with tension as they learned what had happened, but they weren't alone. Soon, a mysterious man in a suit, wearing sunglasses despite the night, entered and introduced himself. "Pleased to meet you all. I am Bao Jik Luber, Master of the Dark Tower." Egan recognized him as the longtime Master of the Dark Tower, and one of 3 legendary dark mages who had made a pact with the Demon King of Confinement. Lady Theonis glared at him with hatred. "You dare show your face after everything that's happened?" Liu Beijie calmly asked her to stay composed, saying the Dark Tower was not involved in this incident. Theonis slammed the table. "So you're saying the Red Tower is at fault?" Bao Jik Luber then explained. The Dark Tower couldn't oversee every dark mage. The one behind this incident was Jevid, who operated under the Arcane Council, not the Tower. As Theonis prepared to argue further, Julius interrupted to ask why he had come. Bao Jik Luber humbly admitted that he bore some responsibility. Centuries ago, simply studying dark magic was a crime punishable by death. But after a treaty with the Great Vermau and the Demon King of Confinement, it became legal, so long as it was voluntary. Now, contracting and teaching dark magic is no longer a crime. He had come out of respect for House Leonhe's will. Julius realized that Bao Jik was lowering himself unnecessarily for the sake of Liunhe's honor. Baojik confirmed he didn't want conflict with their family, so he came to take responsibility. All drug-related crimes would be judged under Eros law. Everyone in that den would be jailed. The succubus would be warned. And Baron Ofer, who colluded with Javid to lure Ion into a pact, would be executed by Baojik himself. Suddenly, the lights in the tower went out. With no wind present, Baojik summoned a dark orb and announced, "The demon king of confinement had something to say." Hearing that name ignited Aegon's fury, though he restrained himself. Baojik cast a spell to reveal glowing ancient runes, translating them aloud. The demon king of confinement was enraged that House Vermau, one of his favorites, had been targeted, and thus declared that Baron Ofer would be executed. Aegon couldn't listen anymore. His killing aura flared, and he roared with rage at the hypocrite demon who dared claim affection for their family. Julius, too, trembled with anger, wishing he could tear the bastard to shreds. The message ended. "Once again, I bow in apology, my lord. Though this may not appease your anger, know that both the Dark Tower and the Demon King of Confinement are doing their best to honor House Liunhe's dignity." With Julius silent, Baojik Luber stood, bowed deeply, and prepared to leave. "I hope our next meeting will be in friendlier circumstances." As he turned, he locked eyes with Aegon and gave a mysterious, challenging smile. Aegon responded with a fierce, glowing stare of his own. Julius, holding his face in pain, called out to Aegon, asking him to step outside for a while. Now, only 3 people remained. After a moment of calm, Julius turned to Liu Beiji with a weary, solemn face and said, "It seems I've made a serious mistake with you this time. This happened because of my negligence. I will bring Ion back to the main house of the clan." The world was in chaos as the children of Sushan's daughter. The demon Zhang Xiao rose up to wreak havoc. While other heroes were focused on exterminating monsters, the foolish Aegon saw it as a competition with the leader, Vermeo. In the end, before the demon kings were even defeated, Aegon died, stabbed in the back, while protecting his rival. Just before his death, he clearly heard Vermao promise to eliminate the remaining 2 demon kings.